Hola, hola a todos.
Hi, everyone. What I wanted to comment on is about journalism and programmers, or programmers in the newsrooms. As you probably know, journalism is a way of building opinions, shaping opinions. The press is never neutral, and the press is changing all over the world. You have the idea that the people say that the press and the media have problems to follow the models had so far, and there is no hierarchy, and research journalism looks for the books and see what articles do. They do cafe journalism. So the way we produce journalism is changing. There's lots and lots of information because we have internet and the networks, and the amount of information and contents changes how we do research and journalism so far. And every 2 days, more information is produced than all what humanity had produced until 2003. It's lots and lots of information, and journalists have to change in the way they analyze and manage information for the interviews. And for that, as we're speaking about superheroes, Fernando speaking about superheroes, programming is a superpower. And to publish data so that they are understandable, automating how you write and update information due to the changes you have in the governments, analyzing the social media. For all that, we need to have journalism. So journalism, we need to have programmers. Oh, she corrects herself. We also need journalists, but we need programmers. So journalism is undergoing change. So what can we do now in this regard? We have journalists who are learning how to program. You have programmers who are going over to journalism and are creating impressive research programs based on all the data that is available. You can see this in New York Times. That is a good example. Los Angeles Times has lots of interesting applications with data. NPR. So what is data journalism? Data journalism is collecting information, analyzing data, visualizing the data, automating the task of scrapping sites where need information that is being published automatically. It is creating software so that journalists are not vulnerable when looking for the sources. A very clear case was this here, which is a Snowden case with his leak. It was very important to have safe ways of communicating. And a good example of data journalism, this is an old example of 1854, and I want to show you. This was a doctor who mapped the cholera cases, and this is the way they discovered that cholera was not transmitted by air, but with the water sources. So he had access to the cholera case, and he mapped the sources, and he prepared a map, and he discovered that cholera was transmitted with polluted water. So that is the data journalism. And this is a Snowden case, or leaking information. And this has to do with state security, but also security in other networks of power, not only the governments. So we need to have programmers who are really involved to produce an impact. There are applications where the programmers and journalists are doing things to see what is the amount of money the doctors receive from the pharmaceutical industry, or draft laws that support the politician you voted for. So there's lots and lots of software that is being prepared by the programmers for journalists, and that generate a lot of impact. So they change the way we read the news and how the newspapers read us. There's a program that I'm part of, which is Mozilla Open News. What Open News does is to put programmers in the newsrooms all over the world, New York Times, Washington Post, La Nación in Africa. And what they do is to create innovation technologies for journalists. So that is an example, and it would be great if those who are interested in this to do so. Programmers here who could apply this program. We also have data. Fernando referred to this is the ONG we're working with data journalism, trying to raise the awareness of the journalisms.
My name is Jaime Andres, and I'm at Diablo Urbano. Somebody registered me in this talk, so I had to think it over. One of the things that struck me, I was there in Rails and here in RubyConf, and we have talked about technical things and motivation. We discussed very interesting features, things that we didn't know or we didn't remember, and actually we had a lot of fun. However, one of the many things in common that I've seen that's happening in this conference and that I hadn't seen previously is that we talked a lot about our skills, about what we do, about what we are capable of doing, or what we should improve, even in future work or future projects or even our lives. So we questioned a lot our culture being more inclusive, more diverse, more friendly. And I think that there have been some key words here. One of them, I think, was superheroes, and the Rails Girls issue that was mentioned more than once, inspiration, talking with project management and even freelancing and everything around the lessons by Jim. Another thing that we have challenged a lot is about our existence. We've wondered what we do as developers, what we can do to be more inclusive, how we can improve the teaching, the training process for others and for ourselves, how to work in teams. And probably one of the talks that I liked the most and that struck me the most was how we can be free. So after these 4 days, in my case, and some other people too, or even more, I can say that in some things I learned and in others I recalled things. And basically the idea is to follow my passion. In my case, software is reading, it's sharing, it's photography, and being happy. So before this, that took me less than 2 minutes, not as a conclusion, but rather as a question that you should answer to yourselves, not just today, but throughout your lives, is what's your passion? Thank you.
Hola a todos. Complain. Vamos a hablar en inglés para conseguir entendernos.
Yeah, sorry for that. I can speak Spanish. I only say, hola, ¿qué hace?
Okay, so we have been here to talk more about Rails Girls in Montevideo.
Hi, I'm Leticia. I'm a consultant for a Brazilian company called HAL and a Swedish company called Avidity. I participated on the last Rails Girls in Porto Alegre.
I'm Pamela. I'm from Peru. I have been working in Rails Girls in Lima, in Porto Alegre, and organizing the Montevideo edition. And I'm a consultant developer as well. So what is Rails Girls?
Basically, Rails Girls is an initiative to bring more girls to our community, to the technology community, to help them build their ideas through programming.
So, in this edition, how it happened?
We had like a small talk after Porto Alegre event, Tanya and I, and she was like, how about Rails Girls Montevideo, since you're attending RubyConf Uruguay? And I was like, okay, let's do it. So we talked with Pote and Neo guys and people who were willing to help, and then we set up an event.
Yeah, so the first day we have talks about how is IT, talking about clearing stereotypes, about who is working with IT. We have girls sharing their experiences, and we as well have Sibyl, Florian's mother, talking about how she has been working with computing.
And we had some installation party for the girls to get to know how to install Ruby and Rails and stuff. And in the second day, we had like sharing the experiences through the coaches and building the web apps. So we have these incredible photos. And the result?
So yeah, the result is that we were not expecting so much help and amazing people here in Uruguay, for the fact that we are not from here. We found a really awesome community willing to share their time and their knowledge with girls that they don't know and anything. This is amazing people that participate. It's fine.
Sorry.
And we really have a lot of help and people interested here in Uruguay, so we think that's awesome. And
the girls got so happy to learn and to share experiences between themselves. We have this this lovely photo of Sophia eating a Rails Girl cupcake. And this quote is from Camilo, which was one of my pupils, my student. And she's there, and she's willing to learn. She's going to be monitored by me. She wants to do a game in JavaScript. I'm so proud of her.
And another thing is that events like Rails Girls, RubyConf, and meetups, whatever the community does, it's awesome to help people connect with other people, meet people from different backgrounds, and just that the photo can explain it better. So our last message is that we hope that here in Montevideo and in Uruguay keep working on this, because we see that people is interested and have inclusion and diversity for minorities and people that maybe don't know about IT, but they could feel interested if we can show to them.
And events like these are important, because if you're really willing to learn and you keep studying, you have like Michelle and Cecilia and Main, which are great examples of how you can progress. So that's a little bit about what Rails Girls Montevideo can do, and we really have to have more events like this in Uruguay, because we had like 100 registrations, and we had to pick only 25 girls, so there's at least 75 girls willing to learn, so please do something. That's it.
Thank you, guys.
Our most important resource as programmers is a capacity to concentrate. You can have all the time in the world, but if you are not capable of concentrating for at least part of the time, you will be unable to develop anything that is meaningful beyond today. And our code has to be maintainable. We had lots of presentations on how to make better code, how to write as freelancers. But if this does not go hand in hand with responsibility with our own selves, then you don't progress. The nature of human mind works at random. You have a thought, and that takes you to another thought, and then to yet a further thought. I open my email customer, I go to the Twitter notification, look at the feed, and I go to Facebook, and now I didn't do any productive work. So here, what I'll tell you about is the path I followed to try and avoid all those digressions or procrastinations, and to be able to produce something every single day. So these are a couple of recommendations that were useful for me. Some I discovered after having needed them, but it was quite good. The learning way was interesting. So if these are useful to you, you can resort to this. One are the time slots. So when you have reduced time slots, you have a limit of time to do something. So I suggest, well, I'm going to do this within this period of time. So add some stress or pretend that it is something mindset. I say, well, in this hour, I'm going to answer mail. I'm going to dedicate this hour of the day to answer the mails, or have half an hour to finish this proposal. So you can determine the size of the time slot, but time slots are really, really useful. So divide your time into time slots and try to allocate them properly. This was very useful for me. I started with smaller slots. I found it very difficult to concentrate at the beginning. Another one is to write lists. You can write a list, which is your commitment for the day, or these are the 3 most important things I want to do. These are the 3 that I would like to add to those 3, if possible, and if not, I'll leave them for the following day. And these other days are things that on some day I will be able to do or not. So you have to prepare those lists, I say, well, I committed myself to these 3 things and I did it. So it's your own feedback. And that's great. Really, I met my goals. Now, this is the Pomodoro technique. This is a prefabricated technique. So this technique has been patented. States, well, work for 25 minutes, work concentrated on only one task. So keep focused. Don't write your email while you compile the code. No, just really keep focused. And then you have a 5-minute break to do anything that is away from your computer. So defocus, focus, defocus, focus, defocus. And at some moment, you will have a moment saying, well, I want a longer period of rest because you deserve a longer break. Because I concentrated for a certain period of times. And this is a good technique. You can determine what is best for you, 25 or 5, but it is useful to share this information. And the last technique I discovered is a chain technique. The chain technique is very simple. You print a calendar and say, for 10 days, I want to learn closure. Day 1, make a cross. Day 2, another cross. I'm doing that. The only rule is not to break the chain once you have it. So if you have a chain of crosses, well, don't break it. And GitHub helps a lot with this because in our daily stats of the reports, I can have, well, I add a green square here. So that's good. I did this for 60 days and it was a terrible challenge, but I did 60 days of open code. So not always very useful, but that was open code. And what I was quite surprised is that I then found a book by Christian Grobmeier, and he spoke about the same and described many of these techniques and many more. So if you're interested in this, you can look for it. And this is something that you have to improve all the time. You can find your comfort zone and then see how you can improve day after day. So that's a Kaizen. We want to do that. It's continuous improvement. Thank you. That is all.
I always hear myself, so I don't understand. My name is Francesco. I'm from Peru. There we have a community too. Basically, 2 years ago, we had a problem to have new people entering the community. So let me tell you about 3 things. The first is to translate a book that is called Learn to Program. Has anybody read it? Learn to Program. It's a basic book to learn Ruby, and now we moved it to rubysoar.org. And there you can see something like this. And then we received many questions about Rails, and it was difficult to learn because it was in English, so we did the same thing with Rails, and we translated this to RubySoar. If you want to see it, there you have the link. And finally, there's a problem with this. I wrote it 1.5 years ago, so it's in 3.2, but if anybody wants to help, I have a diff with what needs to be updated, so that would be wonderful. And the last thing is that with mine, we are writing a book on Cuba. That's a micro framework in Ruby, and rather than a book about a framework, it's about a way you can do more simple web development. Because if somebody new comes to the community or asks you what language could I begin with, you wouldn't say Java, because probably they'll have to learn a lot of things like syntaxes and things, and the same for programming. That is, you shouldn't start with something very complex as Rails, for instance. And I think that for beginners shouldn't be treated as if they were dummies. I'm sure that we are just as worried about security as ourselves. This is the link. This is work in progress. It's in English now, but I'm going to start translating it to Spanish. These are the links. Thank you. Hello, I'm Irene Figueira from Barcelona.
I've been living here for 2 years. I'll start to breathing because I'm very, very nervous. Let me breathe first. You can breathe with me. I come to speak from the bottom of my heart. That is why my breathing is connected with my mind, so I'm clear with what I want to share with you. I'm going to speak about an idea that is becoming a project, and it has been going through my brain for a year and a half already. It's lots of ideas and concepts and things, which maybe it's not my idea, but it's something that is just floating there, and you can breathe it, and many people speak about this. Many people are already implementing. So these are many projects that share the common thing, that these are community working for the common good. They share the knowledge, they share the things. I got even more nervous now. Sorry, I have to breathe again. Okay, I had very little time for my talk. So we create this creamos, we create, so it's in the plural in Spanish, as an S in the end, and it has this A-E, which is in Spanish, create and believe. In Spanish, creer, crear. So we are at the service of people. We're not working for our own individual benefit, although we do enjoy this. We're always enjoying what we do. We offer and we need to exchange lots and lots of resources and services. That is what we like to do. That is what we know how to do. That is what the knowledge we have. So we want to make our dreams come true. And sometimes those dreams, those projects, those goals turn out being new resources and services that are at the service of people. And I did this drawing because with so many diagrams, I said, well, this looks like the flower of life. And the new thing about this idea, with all the things that you find in the internet, is that it breaks down the materialization of dreams, because first we have a dream, then we start to have ideas that are more concrete, more specific as to how we can make that dream come true. And then those ideas, well, I'm going in that direction, so I drive in that direction, so I do a better breakdown of things, so I'm aware of the new ideas that I need, of the resources and services I will be needing to develop my projects. So there are many platforms. Yesterday, someone spoke about Catarse.net, and there are many more of those. So the 3 steps to be able to develop these are very easy. So you have to link all the things that are useful for us. We have to classify them. We have to prioritize them, find names, and see what we're really looking for and what we're doing. And then we have to connect all these together and establish the relationships. So this looks as follows. A person can tell us their identity. I have my Facebook, my blog, and then the resources, the goods I share with the people I exchange with, the services I offer, the projects I'm involved in, the ideas I have and I'm sharing to be able to develop them and improve them, and the dreams that motivate me to implement all these projects. Now, at the same time, this can be a community that it's sharing its resources, its services, and its projects. So if this is developed with open code, you can be viewed as an application with 6 circles that are related with one another. So in that application, the communities can develop this based on the functionalities that they need. If I sell fruit, I'm going to establish a relationship that allows me to exchange fruit for other fruit. But if I'm a community that has fruit and cookies, well, I can have more things to exchange. So we can grow in a way in which no one overrides the other. So each community grows and develops as they need, and they connect with the other communities in the way they need to. And this was 4.5 minutes, so I still could go on speaking for hours on end. You can find me at Synergy Co-work. So it's in the air. This idea is in the air. It's not my idea. Thank you for allowing me to convey it.
Well, I'm seeing whether this Having drank a lot last night helps me, but I don't think so. Ruby Lab is a space that actually it's several spaces where we get together to learn about Ruby and other things. This is the link. You search Ruby Lab. We are not ranking first, obviously. There's a joke where I say that if you are on page 2 of Google, you are not really worth it. I don't know whether you've seen it. Well, let me give you the difficult way. Let me give you the URL. So there you'll see that every Wednesday we get together in Buenos Aires in the evening. So if you live near and you want to join us, you come around. And if you don't live there, but if you visit the place one Wednesday, you can, or you can just join us from home. It's an experience that's very pleasant. So it's just a matter of starting to do it. You don't need to know much about Ruby, just getting together. We're also doing some Python and VR. We try to keep the languages open, and R and Python. Although our main activity is to learn, when the people that learn more, they sort of get more daring and start working with projects together. That's all. Thank you.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Mi nombre es Cecilia Rivero.
My name is Cecilia Rivero, and I wanted to talk about an application that I developed a short time ago. I participated last year organizing RubyConf Argentina, and there very often we had to choose things. We had to vote on different issues. So the normal dynamic was that somebody would send an email with a list on the problem that had to be decided, and everybody started giving their feedbacks and voting and changing their votes. And so we had a very long list, many emails. So finally you had the rack folder with thousands of mails just with the conference of 1 year. So I thought of this possibility of developing this app to solve this, so that everything that has to be voted may be handled here. It's an app that was developed in Cuba, of course, using Redis as a database and as a mapper. These are the main, and then all the minimalist stack that you're all familiar with. And you can try it. You register as user, you create a ballot, and the rest also register. You can start adding comments and options to the ballots and vote. You can change your vote until the deadline comes, and then you show the results. The ballot, it's called score or range voting. It's a cardinal voting, so you don't choose a winner. It's not that you choose one of the winners and don't say anything about the rest. You have to score all the options. This has many advantages because you know more about all the options, what each user thought of each of the options, not just one. So at the end, you have the results that are a ranking with the first, second, third position with a score that puts together all the scores that application had, so it gives a better picture of the ballot. The most important thing, although maybe it's not useful for you because I don't know whether you have to vote things in groups, is that it's open source and you can see it here. If you're interested in Cuba to use a minimalist stack, you can see it and you can see how this was developed. And so that you may be aware that there's another open source project that's developed in Cuba.
So before starting, thank you for the guy who wrote me down for the lightning talks. I love you. As I have nothing to say, what I wanted to do now that I'm back in Uruguay is to tell you about my life with respect to RubyConf in Uruguay and then after in Argentina. The first conference I attended was a 2010 conference. At that time, I knew no one. I did nothing on Ruby. I knew no one in the community. And I met a couple of guys of the Buenos Aires community. And a couple of months later, when I went back to Buenos Aires, I ended collaborating with the organization RubyConf in Argentina. And all that led me to change jobs, to meet wonderful people, to have the responsibility and pride of having been coach of the Punch Girls, and to meet people I had never expected I would meet. So my message for those of you who come for the first time to a conference, or for those who have come to many conferences, I only speak to the people who are with you. My message is, don't just listen to the talks of the conference. The best thing of the conference are all the people who are up there and down here and the people here. So meet everyone, and a big round of applause for Vero, Pote, Charlo, Cuervo, Her.
Anyway, so I was, someone suggested that I talk about DevOps. I just started doing DevOps just recently. Been historically an application developer, so it's kind of new to me. So I wasn't going to just spill my guts about DevOps, what kind of tooling we're using, and just kind of interesting things to me right now, but I think that might be a waste just because there's not a lot of time. And so if anybody wants to talk about that later, hit me up. So what I really want to kind of talk about is just learning and just kind of the life cycle of a developer's career and just going through different phases and how you pick up new tools or dance moves, so to speak. So I actually started as a graphic designer. My career, I got involved with web development, got lucky, landed a job, worked in a web shop. I knew nothing of, Apache web servers, nothing of this. Eventually I learned more through my peers. They show me things, and so I'm exposed to this new magic that's really cool. It's beautiful, because we're all makers. We make beautiful things, A lot of us don't understand the things that other people create, We have to have a similar medium to actually experience the true beauty that they actually make. See, like code, whereas, graphic design, it's pixels. They're colored pixels on a page, But through peers, you're able to learn, and just learning different things and chasing the beauty that is involved in a web stack or any application development framework, especially Ruby. Ruby's beautiful. So I saw a really interesting talk at Golden Gate Ruby Conference last September. It was by Sarah May, and she talks about something really interesting, and it's the theory of the study of novel information in learning. So the more different information that you learn in your day-to-day basis, the more effective learner that you are, as opposed to monotony. You're not going to be as effective learner, whereas you mix it up. If you're a front-end developer or you're a graphic designer, like, hey, let's learn JavaScript, you're just going to be better off. And they did MRI studies, and I'm totally reiterating Sarah May. Please check out that talk. They did MRI studies that shows that novel information actually makes your middle brain produce dopamine, which among other things, it accelerates learning. So, very interesting stuff. And now on to just peers, just talking with your peers, being able to learn from your peers. It's sometimes very difficult. I think a lot about Michelle's, slides earlier. Just things are scary. If you're just you're learning. Your confidence may not be great. You have to take a plunge every day, and sometimes senior developers are hard to approach. So, I think it's very important that we all just kind of, put egos aside and just really help one another and just kind of, just be more cohesive in helping one another learn these new, beautiful technologies to progress in careers. And so I saw a really interesting quote. It's actually, so I actually wrote it down so I don't screw it up. But, and this is kind of, anyway, on with the quote. But this is my only somewhat slide. And so it's like an inception of quote. It's a Henry David Thoreau quote quoting Confucius. So anyway, Confucius said, to know what we know, Confucius said, to know that we know what we know and that we do not know what we do not know, that is true knowledge. When one man has reduced the fact of the imagination to be a fact of his understanding. And so I think that's really interesting. And he was talking more in a broader scope, but I think this applies a lot to people that are trying to learn. It's like, sometimes when you're going into new positions, you kind of want to act like you know things to senior developers. Whereas the best way to learn is just be true to yourself. Just like, I don't know something, reach out to somebody. Say like, I only know so much. You can't be like, oh yeah, okay, SCP, SSH, what? Okay. And then I think just that opens up a clear channel just to absorb more information and to go further and, really pick up information as you go along. And just, the pupil and the student are better in the long run. And as well, just, I don't have like a real snazzy quote to go along for the mentors, but again, just, I encourage everybody to just have all their doors open and just try to help people along, and we're all in this together and just make awesome projects because we're makers. So that's it. Thanks.